This week, though, we've got the amazing Joe Carteret with the Carteret Group in the greater Charlotte area. Joe, are you with me?
How's it going, Bryon?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
No, thank you for agreeing to do it. So, Joe and I had a great conversation leading up to this in our prep call, and I've been really excited to have this conversation today because I think this is going to help a lot of agents. So, first, Joe, a little bit about you and the team there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was fortunate enough to be introduced to EXP in October of 2021, and then finally came on in April 2022.
Okay.
Just as everything was really getting crazy, and we were in the middle of all the craziness with COVID and how that shifted our market. Charlotte is one of the prime markets for relocation. We've got over 115 people a day moving to the Charlotte region. And so for us, we knew that we needed good, talented individuals to be able to be on our team and make an impact in the area. And we've been blessed to be named Charlotte's Best Real Estate Team and Charlotte's Best Real Estate Agent 2 years in a row. And that was a community voted and driven award for us. So it's just, it goes back to our team and all the efforts that they put in. And we're super excited to be here and grateful to be able to share kind of what we're doing differently here.
Well, we are very proud of that. What you and the team have done there in the Charlotte area, not only for yourselves but also for EXP Realty as a whole. That's amazing, and congrats on that.
Thank you.
Um, so, with this NAR settlement, immediately people's mind went to the buy side of the transaction because that was where the biggest change of this came from. And yet, on the listing side, there's a lot of changes. And by the way, we're not even settled on all the changes, right? The dust has not yet gone to the ground on all of this. We're still figuring things out. So I'm kind of curious. First, from a kitchen table standpoint, what are you hearing from sellers about this whole NAR decision? And what's in their mind? What misperceptions are out there?
Yeah, great question, Bryon. And so for us, we're seeing a little bit of a mixed bag. For the most part, sellers aren't really dialed into it from a standpoint of, roadblocks up or any kind of detrimental conversations. What we're finding is a lot of people have seen noise about it. They've seen, of course, what the media is feeding them. But the folks that we're dealing with also are going into the conversations with an open mind of, okay, tell me what's really going on. And so we took advantage of that opportunity and in many cases got ahead of it because our dialogue actually started with either leads that we had in our CRM, past clients that eventually down the road would become a seller, or just people within our network of education. And one of the biggest challenges is making sure that the masses are educated and hopefully educated sooner than by the time you get to their kitchen table so that they're hearing factual information. And of course, we're prepared to back that up with data and resources. But in those conversations, it's really been, okay, just let me know what's going on. What is this I'm hearing and what is the media telling us? And they're going into it cautiously, but also understanding that a lot of it probably is noise. The biggest misconception is that it really has been all about commission. And instead, it's about making sure that each party is truly being represented by their representation and then being able to break down what that actually looks like. Who's representing you when you're out here listing your house? And then we've switched the conversation around if they decide to offer a compensation to the other side of the deal. That's really a marketing fee. And so we've kind of shifted what that language has been as well, because at the end of the day, we have found that people understand marketing a whole lot easier than they do fee. Fee sounds scary. Marketing makes sense to people. And then, of course, we've expanded the conversation from there.
Yeah. And you mentioned being a little proactive. I'm curious, what does that look like? Like what's the communication that you're making and how frequently and how are you making that?
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as, we'll give you kind of our little script here. It's, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, to market your home to the broadest audience, we need to entice a buyer's agent. Because at the end of the day, this really isn't about commissions, but it's about a strategic investment into marketing to make sure that we reach the masses and that your property stays top of mind of those who are out actively looking willing and able to actually pull the trigger on their next property and give you what you're looking for from a net perspective. So again, it's a shifting the message. That's just high level, kind of what our script has been. But we've started that dialogue early, as I mentioned, and it's simply providing breakdowns, high level pieces of the settlement and how it impacts them versus getting rid of the noise of things that really don't impact the majority of sellers. Sellers understand this, that at the end of the day, in order to reach the majority of folks' goals, I need the majority of people to lay eyes on my home. And if my home is prepared for the market through our team's support in preparing their home for the market, and I can get as many people to see my home or know about my home, the chances are higher that I'm actually going to get an offer. And if I get an offer, and the more chances of offers I have, the potential for a higher offer or one that meets my needs as a seller is going to increase. And so that's basic. The majority of people understand that, especially when you give it to them just like that. You break it down, you remove the noise, and you keep it to the basics, because at the end of the day, if it meets their needs, that's what they want to know. It's how are we going to get there is really the nuts and bolts that you got to go a little deeper with.
Yeah, and in our conversation, you'd mentioned a great analogy about discount brokers. Is that something that you actually share with sellers, or is that just you and me talking?
Yeah, at the end of the day, look, here's the thing. Um, it can if there's going to be a ton of different strategies. There's a ton of different ways to get from point A to point B in the real estate business. We all understand that. At the end of the day, what we stay focused on is our value. If we can focus on our value and we can focus on building authentic relationships and reaching the masses with our message, and our message resonates with those individuals, they're the kind of people we want to work with. And so for us, we don't get caught up in this idea that next big thing, or somebody may take this and, a real estate agent use it to their advantage to, minimize or give fear mongering into someone that this is the end of the world and that kind of thing. We just keep it simple. We relate to the individual client and, most importantly, their actual needs, because we all understand that's differently from person to person. And then we focus on the value that we bring, so that when the conversation around a specific fee does come up, whether that's 0% or it's a percent, just use, a dramatic example here, but regardless of what your fee is, at the end of the day, they are going to see that that fee is worth paying because they truly believe that we are going to be their best shot. We're very open about the idea of a discount broker. Look, if you want to bring someone in here to pay them $300 or $400 to put it in the MLS for you, that's fine. You can absolutely do that. And you know what? If you feel that's the best for you, I encourage you to try that. But here's what you need to look for. Here's the red flags that you need to be mindful of. And this isn't any fear. I'm not trying to get you to sign a document. This is reality. If this was my property, this is what I would be concerned with. Is it going to reach the masses by minimizing the importance of this sale? Because that's what you're doing, Mr. Seller, is you're minimizing the importance of this sale by trying to get the cheapest price. It's like Dollar Tree and Nordstrom. They both serve a client, and they're both great stores for that client or for a specific need. If I need cheap balloons, I could go to Dollar Tree. If I need a really nice blazer that I want to stand out and capture an audience and bring in the majority of people to walk up to me and say, wow, I love that blazer, or perfect blazer for this event, then I'm going to go to Nordstrom and I'm going to pay more because I see the value in getting something that is going to attract the people that I want to attract. Same thing, Mr. Seller, with your house. Do you want me to put it in front of the people that are looking for cheap dollar balloons? Or do you want me to get it in front of the people that are going to really be eager and hungry to run into your home and be competitive in what they offer in getting your home locked down? So, small example, we build upon that, but it's just a way that we try to get very simple with the conversation.
Yeah. And by the way, that's a beautiful blazer you've got on. And when it comes to, you got it. When it comes to talking about this with your sellers at the kitchen table, how do you approach this whole topic of are we going to offer a concession or not? Are we even having that conversation with your sellers, or are we going to just wait until the offers come in? You proactive? How do you do it?
Yeah, again, we're proactive. We get ahead of it. We want to kind of hit the conversation, see what questions they have, and then we move on. But what we don't do, and again, this is how we operate. It's not one size fits all. But what we don't do on our team is we don't run around getting worried. In North Carolina, because I know there's other states on here, we have what we call Form 220. Form 220 essentially is a compensation form that the state has provided to us and said, use this if you are a buyer's agent and you want to secure some kind of fee, okay? Everybody's doing a different variation of how they're getting that fee signed, meaning when they're getting it signed. But what we're not doing is worrying about in that listing appointment someone else's fee. That's not my job. My job is to understand the seller's needs, articulate my value, state my fee very openly to do the job that they're hiring me to do, feel very confident in that because I'm not going to waver from that because I showed you my value and I know I'm the guy to get the job done. And then we're going to get out there and we're going to list your property. We're going to have dialogue and say, now a heads up. Through this process, we may get an offer or we may get a buyer's agent that asks me, hey, Joe, my buyers are directing me to ask, is your client willing to compensate and provide some kind of fee, whatever that fee may be, for bringing a buyer to the deal? And what I advise my sellers to say is absolutely. My sellers are open to discussion and will entertain any requests that you decide to send over on behalf of your clients. Once we get an offer, and we'll sign that request if that's what the seller's saying, we'll sign that request and we'll send it back. Once we get an offer, my sellers also have committed to following through fully with that commitment with an acceptable offer that meets their seller needs. And that's all we should be saying on my team. That's what we're saying. But basically, we're giving a heads up that the seller, you may see this come across. What we don't want to do is show our hands. We don't want to turn around and throw the kitchen sink out because I'm not a discount broker. And that's the same prop I use when I go into the conversation of listing. Why would you want me to come in here and negotiate my commission up front, throw all of it out the window and do it for next to nothing? Well, equally, I'm not going to go throw all your money out the window up front as well. I'm going to protect that until we find out where their head is. Because guess what? That buyer's agent actually may come to the table, especially in a competitive market. They may come to the table and say, hey, here's our offer, and we're not asking for any compensation. If I'm a buyer's agent and you bring up that you're offering compensation, of course I'm going to take that. Why wouldn't I? Because their focus is on their client, right? So that's how we're approaching it, saying let's pause, let's wait to see how things are going. Now, I will say the caveat there is if we have a property that's going to be tough to sell, Bryon, we know up front, we're very transparent with our clients. This is going to be a tough one. You've deferred maintenance. You haven't done the updates. You've got things in here that should have been changed out 15 years ago. We're going to have to be more aggressive because, again, this is a marketing fee. And the more I need to market, the more aggressive I need to be to get this thing across the finish line, the more money I need to be offering up to that buyer's agent, Mr. Seller. And that's what that dialogue looks like.
Yeah, and in our conversation, I know we want to stay away from amounts here. Neither of us going to look good in orange jumpsuits, but in our conversation, you talked about just now the idea that hey, we may not even have to offer any concession on the buy side. So why show our cards, to use your words? But there's also that sort of gray area in between, which is that buyers, hey, never underestimate the lack of self-confidence of other agents in your area. That buyer's agent may come in and ask for a lot less than what your seller may be willing to offer in terms of compensation concessions. And so to your point, why share that you're willing to offer 4 cents when the buyer's agent is only going to ask for 2 cents, and then you put that 2 cents back in your seller's pocket. And what I like about that is the way in which you position it at the kitchen table. And I know you guys have specific forms there in North Carolina that you use. The EXP listing agreement form and the addendum that goes along with it. That's why we did what we did, is to give you that competitive advantage at the kitchen table of just worrying about your commission as the listing agent, and then making sure your seller understands what's customary, what's likely to happen, and what are we going to do about that if and when that comes to pass. And that can help differentiate yourself. So I loved your script there. Folks watching at home, go back on YouTube and rewatch this and borrow those scripts. And if you have not seen Holly Mabry's amazing masterclasses, she did a part 1 and part 2, basically one on buyers, one on sellers, where she goes through those forms. Do check that out as well. So I'm curious. You're not indicating out there that yeah, well, you said if the property warrants it, maybe. But other than that, you're not necessarily showing cards and indicating that you're willing to offer concessions. But I'm betting that you get that Form 220 preemptively from some of these buyers agents in your area before they even show the property.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Look, we'll play ball. If they want to send it, it's not a problem. I'm not dogging everyone, and I think all of us have an obligation as professionals to lead with great. We've got in mind. Folks don't know what they don't know. They're being directed by their firm to do it a certain way, and that's okay as well. So we're going to, of course, present everything. We're going to get in front of our sellers, and if our sellers in that moment decide to sign it, that's not a problem. We'll get it signed and we'll send it back over. But what's important, especially in North Carolina, your state may be different, but in North Carolina, that compensation remains a part of the negotiation all the way until my seller has decided that it meets their net and they put ink to paper on that final version of an offer. So an example of that, and this is just like when we go into negotiations around home inspection reports or appraisals and things like that, is why in the world would I start out the dialogue saying, hey, thanks for showing my client's house on every example. By the way, if you get a home inspection, we're actually going to give you $20,000. Nobody would do that, right? So the same is true here. We're not going to start the dialogue like that when the other side's coming to us. But what we are going to do, if they decide to send it and my seller wants to sign it, we'll certainly send it back. We will wait for their offer to come through. And then if it matches their buyer's need, agent will send their offer through, and we will revive that compensation agreement into the stack of documents that I'm presenting to the seller. And that's a part of the system. And I'm going to go through purchase price and then write on down all the other dollar lines, right? And oh, by the way, as a friendly reminder, you agreed already earlier today or 3 days ago that you're going to pay XYZ, which is a percentage of this number right here. And I'm going to show them that again. And in many cases, I may have a blank seller net sheet. And we pound out the numbers again right there just to make sure that they're feeling very comfortable. And so, and I overestimate everything. I'm one that does a little bit more aggressive with that seller net so that there are no surprises. I think that's always a good best practice, so that worst case scenario, if their overall expenses are going to be, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number, 10%, and you may calculate 12% or 11%, and you tell them that up front. I'm leaving a pretty good buffer here just in case inspection report comes back rough or this and that. And that's how we're having that dialogue in the moment. Now, if it doesn't meet the number, because here's something to remember, a $500,000 house 2 years ago certainly is going to be worth more, especially here in Charlotte now. It's appreciated a lot by now in Charlotte. But let's just use numbers for the sake of the conversation. A $500,000 house that I'm bringing to the market. 2 years ago, I would have had a conversation with my seller about pricing. And as I'm showing the comps and I'm talking about this, I'm going through seller net, that $500,000 is baking in there the commission that we anticipate. And well, in that case, was a part of the conversation, because as soon as we activated it in MLS, it was there. Same scenario today. Nothing really changes. That $500,000 house price that I'm bringing to the market, we've already talked about commission. And you can trust that we've already talked about the potential that may be requested from the other side. And so at the end of the day, a very simple way for agents to kind of break this down is nothing changes in the dialogue and where numbers are being shifted around. It's how we go about getting numbers now, of course, and the paperwork that's required to get it across the finish line. But at the end of the day, the goal is still the same. The goal has never moved on the field, and your goal as an agent on either side is to get there. The conversation is just different on how we get there. And that's what's important to get sellers to think about it that way as well, is that it's a fee to entice, but that fee's always been there. It just is changing hands on how we approach it, right? Same with other agents on the other side. It's just, we got to stay grounded to remembering it's just formalities. It's ways that we have to have this dialogue and present the numbers.
Yeah, and to a certain degree, I can understand the desire on the part of a buyer's agent to call up a listing agent like yourself and say, "Hey, are you guys offering concession?" I can even understand the desire for them to say, "And how much is that? How much are you willing to offer?" But to your point, until there's a bona fide offer, it's really meaningless. And I mean, one of two things are gonna happen. One, the listing agent is going to say no, but that doesn't mean that they're not willing to offer concessions. If there's a bona fide offer, they have to present it to their seller, and their seller may just say, "Sure, that sounds great." And two, the other option is they say, "Yes, we're willing to offer a concession, but your offer comes back low." And they say no. Or they say, "Yes, we're willing to offer a concession of this amount, but your offer doesn't make the numbers make sense for their sellers to actually offer that." And until you have an offer that's in writing, you will never truly know what they're willing to accept and what they're willing to pay in terms of concessions. So I think that's very right on. Um, sorry,
It makes it makes the skill of being a negotiator more important than ever, because that's really where the dialogue should be taking place.
that's right. That's absolutely right. And what's interesting is you'd shared about your community. You have the Realtor Facebook page, and trying to get that message out there to realtors. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a battle, but again, I'm trying to be mindful and lead with grace, but I'm also leading with fact. I think it's important that if you feel confident enough to convey facts or share resources, and again, all of my resources are from actual places, whether it's NAR or whatever has been provided to all of us, because we are all in this together. But I'm also not afraid to share that information. It's important that we're learning, we're having peer accountability and peer knowledge building, because some people just don't have that. Some people are at firms that have not discussed this. They have not done scenarios and role playing. And it's important that we do that. And I've brought this up on these realtor groups that, look, guys, like, send it when you feel necessary. But at the end of the day, we're sending it right before an offer, because nothing is solidified until you send me an offer that matches my seller's needs. And I mean, it goes the same with anybody, with any other offer. If the purchase price is off and commission's not even at play here, if it doesn't match the seller's needs, they're going to say no, or we're going to counter back. And so instead of investing that time, and quite honestly, I feel that, just get out there and focus on your buyer's needs, finding them what they're looking for. I do think, to your point you made a minute ago, it's important for you to have very open and honest dialogue with your buyer when you're getting your buyer's agency agreement signed. You got to make sure you run some scenarios with them as well. And there may be a point to where if $500,000 plus them paying the full commission for you, if that's what it takes to get the deal done, doesn't work, then you need to have tough conversations with your buyer about sacrificing. You're a first-time home buyer. I would love to have a 7,000 square foot as a first-time home buyer, but guess what? I may have to get that 4,000 square foot, right? And if they're able to show the sacrifice and then a plan to get them in a place that's comfortable, that works for their needs now, and then look at a 2-year plan or something like that, you're going to have some of those tough conversations. Sometimes we're all in the same boat. But you should go into it with the mindset that the numbers should make sense in most cases. Of course, there's one-offs, prior to you going out to look at homes that they can't write a check for.
Yeah. I suspect that the same is true on the sell side,
Sure.
right? I'm not out there selling today, but I do know that sellers don't always want to pay for what the services that you're providing. And I imagine that have you been dealing with any sellers who just adamantly are opposed to concessions? And if so, is it the same sort of advice that, yeah, they are opposed now, but let's see what they say when a bona fide offer comes in?
Yeah, it's our job. Like anything, we got to get creative with how we're, the solutions that we're bringing to the table. So, hey, you don't like the idea of a fee? Okay, let's call it something else. Let's talk about a seller concession. If we price the house at $525 and I still feel confident within the comps and I think I can get it to the finish line, would you be open to a seller concession of $10,000 or whatever the number may be? And so oftentimes people are like, yeah, because in seller's mind, I don't know what it is, but sometimes they feel like, oh yeah, because you're raising the purchase price, and they see it easier, that they truly, somebody else is paying it. But again, that conversation goes back with the seller. The best response to that right there, Bryon, is this: in all markets, if you really break it down and look at it, If you price a home at $500,000, you already baked commission into that. And even if you bake double side commission in there, whatever your numbers to cover both may have been 2 years ago, and you go and you price with the same strategy today, who is paying the commission? The buyer is, because if it's a competitive market and they're coming in here and they're writing an offer for $500,000, giving you everything that you wanted, you're getting that net that you wanted. So just change the script. And that's how you get a seller on board, in my opinion. It's not one size fits all. There's going to be one-offs, to your point, but that seemed to work to kind of just paint a different picture.
All right. Well, Joe, thank you so much. We really appreciate this. We hope that these scripts and dialogues and this way of kind of approaching this with your sellers helps you at the kitchen table. It certainly seems to be helping Joe and his team do an amazing job of cleaning up in the market there in Charlotte. Joe, we really appreciate you coming on, sharing your hard-won wisdom with us.
Thank you for the time, Bryon. Really appreciate the opportunity.
My pleasure, man. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you in Miami. All right. Back to you, Russ and team.